Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his forehead as he crawled out of the ventilation shaft. Another day. Another broken air filter in the diplomatic quarters of Harmony Point. The space station was huge and always needed fixing. That was his job and he was good at it. He had been working here for 3 years now, keeping the life support systems running while diplomats from different worlds talked about important things he never really understood. The diplomatic section was the fanciest part of the station. Everything was clean and shiny, not like the maintenance tunnels where Jake spent most of his time. He picked up his toolbox and started walking toward the next repair job when he heard footsteps behind him. They sounded different from human footsteps, more like a soft tapping sound. Jake turned around and nearly dropped his tools. Walking toward him was the most beautiful and strange being he had ever seen. She was tall, maybe 7 feet, with skin that looked like it was made of pale blue crystal. She had 4 arms instead of 2, and her movements were graceful, like she was dancing. Jake knew who she was, because everyone on the station knew. This was Princess Zarathiel of the Valtheri Empire, one of the most powerful rulers in the galaxy. The princess stopped in front of Jake and tilted her head. When she spoke, her voice came through a small device that translated her words into English. "You are Jake Morrison, the maintenance engineer," she said. It was not a question. Jake nodded and tried to stand up straighter. He felt very small next to her. "Yes, Your Highness." "Is there something wrong with the environmental systems in your quarters? I can check them right away." The princess studied his face with large, silver eyes. "There is nothing wrong with my quarters, Jake Morrison. I have come to speak with you about a different matter. I have been watching you work for many months." That made Jake feel uncomfortable. Why would an alien princess watch him fix air filters and replace broken pipes? "I'm sorry, Your Highness, but I think there might be some mistake. I'm just the repair guy. I don't have anything to do with diplomacy or politics or anything important like that." The princess stepped closer, and Jake could see that her crystalline skin seemed to glow from the inside. "There is no mistake. I have a request to make of you, and it is very important to me and to my people." Jake shifted his weight from one foot to the other. This was getting stranger by the minute. "What kind of request?" The princess folded her forearms in front of her chest in a way that looked formal and serious. "I wish you to become the bonded guardian and mentor to my daughters, Lysa and Nira. They are approaching the age where they must choose life partners according to our customs, but they need guidance from someone with wisdom and stability." Jake stared at her for a long moment, trying to process what she had just said. Then he started to laugh, but stopped quickly when he saw that the princess was not joking. "I'm sorry, Your Highness, but I think your translator is broken. Did you just ask me to be some kind of teacher or guardian to your daughters?" "The translation is correct," the princess said firmly. "I am offering you a position in my court. You would be given great wealth, a beautiful home, and respect throughout the empire. All I ask in return is that you guide my daughters through this important time in their lives." Jake shook his head. This had to be some kind of elaborate joke, or maybe a test of some kind. "Your Highness, I think you have me confused with someone else. I fix pipes and air filters. I never went to college. I don't know anything about alien customs, or how to be a mentor to anyone, especially not to alien princesses." The princess moved closer until she was standing right in front of him. Jake could smell something like flowers and electricity coming from her skin. "You are exactly who I want, Jake Morrison. My daughters have also been watching you work. They have seen something in you that even you do not recognize." "What could they possibly see in me?" Jake asked. He was getting more confused and nervous by the minute. "I'm nobody special. I grew up on a farm on Earth and learned how to fix things with my hands. That's all I know how to do." The princess smiled, and when she did, her whole face seemed to light up from inside. Perhaps that is exactly why you are perfect for this task. My daughters need someone who is calm and steady, someone who solves problems without drama or violence. They need someone who thinks with both his heart and his mind. Jake looked down at his dirty work clothes, and then back at the princess. Your Highness, I'm honored that you would even think of me, but this is crazy. Your daughters are alien royalty. They need someone educated and important, not a maintenance worker from Earth. I have studied many species and many individuals, the princess said. I have watched you work under pressure when systems failed and people were in danger. You never panic. You think clearly and act with purpose. You treat everyone with kindness, whether they are important diplomats or cleaning staff. These are the qualities my daughters need to learn. Jake felt his heart racing. This was too much to take in. But what about other humans? Surely there are ambassadors or teachers or someone more qualified than me. The princess shook her head. I do not want ambassadors or teachers. I want you, Jake Morrison. I have made my choice. This is insane, Jake said, running his hand through his hair. I wouldn't even know where to start. What would I teach them? How to fix broken machinery. You would teach them what you already know, the princess said. How to stay calm when everything around you is breaking down. How to solve problems step by step. How to be kind and strong at the same time. These are things that cannot be learned from books. Jake looked around the corridor, hoping that someone would appear and tell him this was all a dream or a mistake. But they were alone, and the princess was still standing there, waiting for his answer. I need time to think about this, Jake said finally. This is the biggest decision anyone has ever asked me to make. The princess nodded. I understand. I will give you 48 hours to decide. But know this, Jake Morrison, my daughters are special and precious to me. They are also very intelligent and very sensitive. Most males of our species are too aggressive and overwhelming for them. They need someone gentle but strong, someone who will not try to control them but will help them find their own strength. She turned and started to walk away, her footsteps making that soft tapping sound on the metal floor. Then she stopped and looked back at him. The daughters of Valtheri have seen something in you that even you do not recognize, Jake Morrison. Perhaps it is time you discovered what that something is. Jake watched her disappear around the corner, leaving him alone in the corridor with his toolbox and his racing thoughts. He looked down at his hands, rough and stained from years of working with machinery. Could these hands really guide alien princesses? Could someone like him really make a difference in the lives of beings so far above his station? He picked up his toolbox and started walking toward his next repair job, but his mind was no longer on broken air filters and faulty wiring. For the first time in his life, Jake Morrison had been asked to do something that might actually matter, something that might change not just his own life but the lives of others. The question was whether he had the courage to say yes. Jake could not sleep that night. He kept thinking about what the princess had said and wondering if he was losing his mind. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw those silver eyes and that glowing crystalline skin. By morning, he had decided. He needed help understanding what was really happening. The first person he went to see was Dr. Lisa Park, the station's xenobiologist. She was one of the smartest people Jake knew, and she had been studying alien species for 20 years. He found her in her laboratory, looking at some kind of plant samples under a microscope. Lisa, I need to ask you about something strange. That happened yesterday, Jake said as he walked into the lab. Dr. Park looked up from her microscope and smiled. Good morning, Jake. What kind of strange thing? Did you find some new alien technology in the ventilation system? Jake sat down in a chair next to her desk. It's about the Valthari princess. She wants me to be some kind of mentor to her daughters. Dr. Park's eyes went wide. Princess Zarathio spoke to you directly. That's very unusual. The Valthari rarely interact with other species on a personal level. She said she's been watching Me work for months, Jake said. She wants me to guide her daughters through some kind of coming voyage thing. I don't understand why she would choose me. Dr. Park turned away from her samples and gave Jake her full attention. Tell me exactly what she said. Jake repeated the conversation as best as he could remember it. When he finished, Dr. Park was quiet for a long time, thinking, "This is very interesting," she said finally. The Velthari are one of the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy, but they have a serious problem. They experience emotions much more intensely than most species. What would make a human feel sad might completely destroy a Velthari mentally. What would make us angry might drive them to violence. So they're unstable? Jake asked. Not unstable. Exactly. But fragile in a way that most people don't understand. Their relationships often end badly because their feelings are too strong. Many young Velthari never learn how to control their emotions, and it ruins their lives. Jake thought about this. So the princess thinks I can teach her daughters emotional control. Maybe, Dr. Park said. Humans are unusual in the galaxy because we found a balance. We can feel deeply, but still think clearly. Most species either became emotionally numb or emotionally overwhelming. We're right in the middle. That afternoon, Jake went to see Captain Roy Brooks, an old space trader who had been dealing with aliens longer than almost anyone. He found Roy in the station's bar, drinking something that smelled like motor oil but was supposedly a delicacy from some distant planet. "Roy, I need to ask you about Velthari customs," Jake said, as he sat down across from the captain. Roy raised an eyebrow. "That's a strange topic for a maintenance guy. What's your interest in the crystal people?" Jake told Roy about his conversation with the princess. The old captain listened carefully, occasionally nodding or making small sounds of understanding. "Well, I'll be damned," Roy said when Jake finished. "You know what she's really asking you to do? Be a teacher, I guess." Roy shook his head. "Not exactly. In Velthari culture, when young people reach adulthood, they choose what they call a life guide. It's not romantic like human marriage. It's more like having an older sibling or mentor who helps them navigate their emotions and make good decisions." Why would she want a human for that job? Because Velthari males are typically very aggressive and dominating. They try to control their partners instead of guiding them. The females often feel overwhelmed and trapped. Roy took another sip of his strange drink. "But you, Jake, you're calm and steady. You listen more than you talk. Those are rare qualities." Jake felt his heart sinking. "But I don't know anything about their culture or their customs. How could I possibly help them?" Roy smiled. "Maybe that's exactly why you're perfect for the job. You won't try to force them to follow old traditions that don't work. You'll just be yourself and let them learn from your example." That evening, Jake was walking through the diplomatic section when he saw two figures standing near a large window that looked out into space. They were clearly Velthari, with the same crystalline skin as the princess, but smaller and younger. Jake realized these must be the daughters. The older one noticed him first. She was tall and graceful like her mother, but her skin had a greenish tint instead of blue. She whispered something to her companion, a shorter Velthari with silver-white skin who looked like she might be an artist based on the paint stains on her clothes. Jake was about to walk past them when the older daughter stepped forward. "You are Jake Morrison," she said through her translator device. "Yes," Jake said, feeling nervous again. "You must be Princess Lysa." The younger daughter joined them. "I am Nira," she said. Her voice was softer than her sister's. "We have been hoping to meet you." "Your mother told you about her request?" Jake asked. Lysa nodded. "We asked her to speak with you. We have been watching you work, and we wanted to know if you would consider helping us." Jake looked at both of them. They seemed nervous too, which made him feel a little better. "Can I ask you something?" "Why me?" "There must be hundreds of people on this station who are more qualified than I am. Nira spoke up. Most males of our species try to impress us with their strength or their intelligence. They speak loudly and demand attention. But you are different. You work quietly and solve problems without making noise about it. We have observed you during emergencies, Lysa added. When the oxygen recycler failed last month, you remained calm, while others panicked. You organized the repair teams and fixed the problem. You saved lives without seeking credit. Jake remembered that day. It had been scary, but he had just done what needed to be done. That's just my job. That is exactly what we mean, Lysa said. You do what needs to be done without drama. Most of our people create drama, even when there is no crisis. Nira moved closer to the window and looked out at the stars. We are different from other Valtheri. We do not enjoy the intensity that our people prize. We prefer quiet thoughts and gentle emotions. Our mother understands this, but most of our people do not. The males who have sought our partnership are too overwhelming, Lysa explained. They want to control our lives and make decisions for us. We want a guide, not a master. Jake felt something shift inside him as he listened to them. These weren't just alien princesses living in a fantasy world. They were young women trying to figure out their place in life, just like any human. Teenager, what would you want from me if I agreed to this? Jake asked. Friendship, Nira said simply. Someone to talk to who will not judge us or try to change us. Guidance when we face difficult decisions, Lysa added. Someone who will help us think through problems logically. And maybe, Nira said quietly, someone who can teach us how to be strong without being hard and how to be gentle without being weak. Jake looked at both of them for a long moment. He thought about Dr. Park's explanation of Valtheri, emotional intensity, and Roy's description of their culture. He thought about his own life and how he had always tried to help people when he could. I'm still not sure I'm the right person for this, Jake said honestly. But I'm willing to try if you really think I can help. Both daughters smiled, and their crystalline skin seemed to glow brighter. It was the first time Jake had seen them look truly happy. There is one more thing you should know, Lysa said. There are others who do not approve of our mother's choice. Some of our nobles believe that only Valtheri should guide Valtheri youth. They may try to challenge your right to help us. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. What kind of challenge? We do not know yet, Nira said. But our mother is very powerful, and she will protect you. She believes that you can help, not just us, but maybe our entire species learn better ways to handle emotions. As Jake walked back to his quarters that night, he realized that his simple life was about to become very complicated. But for the first time since the princess had approached him, he felt like maybe he could actually do this. The daughters weren't looking for a perfect mentor. They just wanted someone who cared about them and would treat them with respect. Maybe that was something he could manage after all. Jake had barely finished his breakfast when the announcement came over the station's communication system. All personnel were invited to observe a formal challenge in the main diplomatic hall. Jake's stomach dropped because he knew this had to be about him. He arrived at the hall to find it packed with beings from dozens of different species. At the center of the room stood Princess Sarathiel, looking calm and regal. Across from her was a tall Valthari male with dark purple crystalline skin and an angry expression. Jake had never seen him before, but he knew this must be the challenger Lysa had warned him about. Jake Morrison, the princess called out when she saw him enter. Please join us. Jake walked to the center of the room, feeling hundreds of eyes, watching his every move. The crowd included diplomats, traders, and station personnel, all curious to see what would happen next. The purple-skinned Valthari stepped forward. I am Lord Kethmer of the Noble Houses, he announced through his translator. I formally challenge the wisdom of choosing this primitive human to guide the daughters of our royal line. Jake looked at Princess Sarathiel, who nodded encouragingly. What exactly does that mean? Jake asked. Lord Kethmer's silver eyes gleamed with disdain. It means you must prove your worth through the traditional trial of understanding. 3. Tests will determine if you possess the qualities necessary to guide Velthari youth. And if I fail? Jake asked, though he was pretty sure he didn't want to know the answer. Then you will be forbidden from any contact with the royal daughters, and the princess will be forced to choose a proper Velthari mentor. Jake looked around the room at all the watching faces. Some looked curious, some skeptical, and a few seemed genuinely interested in seeing him succeed. In the back of the crowd, he spotted Lysa and Nira watching with worried expressions. I accept the challenge, Jake said, surprising himself with how steady his voice sounded. The first test took place in a specially prepared chamber filled with flashing lights, loud noises, and competing smells. Jake was given a complex three-dimensional puzzle to solve while the chaos swirled around him. The idea was to see if he could think clearly under pressure. Jake closed his eyes for a moment and tried to block out the distractions. This was not so different from working in the engine room during an emergency, when alarms were blaring and people were shouting instructions. He had learned long ago to focus on the problem in front of him and let everything else fade into the background. He opened his eyes and began working on the puzzle methodically, moving each piece carefully and testing different combinations. The crowd grew quiet as they watched him work, apparently surprised that he was not overwhelmed by the sensory assault. After 20 minutes, Jake placed the final piece and the puzzle clicked into its completed form. The chamber fell silent and the lights stopped flashing. Lord Kethmer looked annoyed, but said nothing. The first test was complete. The second test involved mediating a dispute between two young Velthari, who were arguing about some philosophical question that Jake did not fully understand. His job was to help them reach an agreement without taking sides or imposing his own solution. Jake listened carefully as both young aliens explained their positions. One believed that tradition should guide all decisions, while the other argued that new situations required new approaches. They were both getting more emotional as they spoke, their crystalline skin glowing brighter with their intensity. Can I ask you both something? Jake said when they paused for breath. What outcome would make you both feel good about this conversation? The question seemed to surprise them. They looked at each other uncertainly. I mean, Jake continued, forget about being right or wrong for a minute. What would a good solution look like to both of you? The traditionalist spoke first. I want our customs to be respected and preserved. The other nodded, and I want us to be able to adapt when the old ways don't work anymore. Jake smiled. So you both want your people to thrive and be successful. You just have different ideas about how to make that happen. Both young Velthari considered this. Slowly, they began to talk about ways to honor tradition while still allowing for necessary changes. Jake mostly just listened and asked occasional questions to keep them focused on their common goals, rather than their disagreements. By the end of the session, they had worked out a compromise that satisfied both of them. Jake had barely said anything, but somehow he had helped them find their own solution. Lord Kethmer was looking more irritated by the minute. The third test was not planned. In the middle of preparing for it, alarms began sounding throughout the station. There was a critical failure in the main reactor that provided power to the life support systems. Without immediate repairs, thousands of beings on the station would be in danger. Jake heard the announcement and immediately started running toward the reactor section. This was exactly the kind of emergency he had trained for. Behind him, he could hear Lord Kethmer shouting something about the test not being finished. But Jake was not listening. The reactor room was in chaos when Jake arrived. Engineers from several species were arguing about how to approach the problem, and the radiation levels were climbing dangerously high. The reactor core was overheating and could explode at any moment. Everyone out, Jake shouted as he grabbed a radiation suit. I'm going in to manually reset the cooling system. That's suicide, one of the other engineers protested. The radiation will kill you in minutes. Jake was already putting on the protective gear. Maybe, but if this thing blows, we're all dead anyway. He sealed his helmet and walked into the reactor chamber. The heat was incredible, even through the suit, and he could hear the warning alarms in his earpiece telling him that he was absorbing dangerous levels of radiation. But he kept moving toward the manual controls. The problem was clear once he got close enough to see it. A coolant pipe had ruptured, and the automatic repair systems were not working. Jake would have to crawl into a narrow space between two radioactive components to reach the backup valve. He squeezed into the gap, ignoring the increasing warnings from his suit's computer. His hands were shaking from the heat and adrenaline, but he forced himself to move slowly and carefully. One mistake here would kill not just him, but everyone on the station. Finally, his fingers found the valve. He turned it slowly, feeling the resistance as the backup cooling system came online. Cold liquid began flowing through the pipes again, and the temperature readings on his suit display started to drop. Jake crawled back out of the gap and stumbled toward the exit. He made it to the door before collapsing, his suit's radiation detector screaming warnings at him. The medical team was waiting for him when he emerged from the reactor room. They rushed him to the station's hospital for emergency treatment, while engineers confirmed that the reactor was stable and the danger had passed. Jake woke up 12 hours later in a hospital bed, feeling like he had been hit by a truck. Princess Zarathiel was sitting in a chair next to his bed, with Lysa and Nira standing behind her. "How do you feel?" the princess asked. "Like I got cooked from the inside," Jake said weakly. "But I'm alive, so I guess that's something." "The doctors say you will recover completely," Lysa said. "The radiation exposure was serious, but not fatal." "What happened with the test?" Jake asked. "Did I fail because I left before it was finished?" Princess Zarathiel smiled. Lord Kethmer withdrew his challenge. He said that anyone willing to risk his life to save others without hesitation had already proven his worth beyond any formal test. Nira moved closer to the bed. He also said that he had never seen anyone remain so calm during such a dangerous situation. He admitted that you possess qualities that would benefit any young Velthari. Jake tried to sit up but felt dizzy. "So, what happens now?" "Now you rest and recover," the princess said. "And when you are well, we will begin your new duties officially. My daughters are eager to start learning from you." "I still don't understand why you chose me," Jake said. "What did you see that made you think I could do this?" The princess stood up and moved to the window. "I have studied many species, Jake Morrison. Most beings either react to danger with panic or with reckless aggression, but humans have something unique. You can feel fear and still think clearly. You can care deeply about others and still make rational decisions." She turned back to look at him. "That is what my daughters need to learn. How to feel without being overwhelmed. How to care without losing themselves. How to be strong and gentle at the same time." Jake closed his eyes and thought about everything that had happened. A week ago, he had been a simple maintenance worker with a quiet, predictable life. Now he was apparently going to be a mentor to alien royalty. "I hope I don't let you down," he said. "You will not," Princess Zarathiel said with confidence. "You have already shown us more about human character than years of diplomatic meetings ever could." As the princess and her daughters left him to rest, Jake realized that his life had changed forever. He was no longer just fixing broken machinery. He was about to help shape the futures of two remarkable young beings. It was terrifying and exciting at the same time. But as he drifted off to sleep, Jake felt something he had never experienced before. For the first time in his life, he felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. Jake spent 2 weeks recovering from his radiation exposure, and during that time, Lisa and Nira visited him every day. At first, the conversations were awkward and formal, but gradually they became more natural. Jake discovered that despite being alien princesses, The sisters had many of the same concerns as any young people, trying to figure out their place in life. When Jake was finally released from the medical bay, he was given new quarters in the diplomatic section. His room was much larger and more comfortable than his old maintenance worker housing, but he felt a bit lost in all the fancy furniture and artwork. Princess Zarathiel had also assigned him a formal position as cultural exchange advisor, which came with a salary that was 10 times what he had been earning as a maintenance worker. Jake felt guilty about the money since he was not sure he was doing anything to earn it yet. His first official day as a mentor began when Lysa knocked on his door early in the morning. She was carrying what looked like a portable computer, but it was made of the same crystalline material as her skin. "Good morning, Jake," she said as he invited her in. "I was hoping you could help me with a problem I am working on." Jake poured himself a cup of coffee and offered Lysa some strange purple drink she had brought with her. "What kind of problem?" Lysa activated her crystalline computer and showed him a three-dimensional hologram of what appeared to be a complex energy system. "I am trying to design a new power source for our ships, but I cannot make the theory work in practice." Jake studied the hologram, trying to understand what he was looking at. "I'm not an engineer like you, but can you explain what's supposed to happen?" For the next hour, Lysa walked him through her designs, getting more and more frustrated as she described the problems she was encountering. Her skin began to glow brighter as her emotions intensified, which Jake was learning was a sign of stress in Velthari. "Maybe we should take a break," Jake suggested, when he noticed her agitation increasing. "No," Lysa said firmly. "I must solve this. I have been working on it for months, and I cannot accept failure." Jake recognized that tone. He had heard it from human engineers who got so focused on a problem that they could not step back and see the bigger picture. "Can I tell you about something that happened to me a few years ago?" Jake asked. Lysa looked surprised but nodded. "I was trying to fix a water recycling system that kept breaking down. I spent weeks taking it apart and putting it back together, checking every component, replacing parts. Nothing worked. I was getting more and more frustrated, working longer hours, losing sleep." "What did you do?" Lysa asked. "My supervisor made me take 3 days off. I was angry about it, but I didn't have a choice. When I came back, I looked at the system with fresh eyes and realized the problem wasn't with the recycler at all. It was with the water pressure coming into the system from the main pipes." Lysa's glow began to fade as she considered this. "You are suggesting that I am too close to the problem to see it clearly. Maybe. Sometimes when we want something too badly, we try to force it to work, instead of letting the solution come naturally." Lysa looked at her holographic display for a long moment, then turned it off. "You may be right. I have been so determined to prove my intelligence that I forgot to think practically." That afternoon, Nira came to see Jake with a different kind of problem. She was carrying a small canvas with a painting on it that looked like a swirling galaxy made of different colored lights. "This is beautiful," Jake said as he examined her artwork. "What's wrong with it?" Nira set the painting on his table and sat down across from him. "The Council of Art Masters says it is too emotional and chaotic. They want me to paint in the traditional Velthari style, with clean lines and geometric patterns." Jake looked at the painting again. It was definitely emotional, with bold strokes and vivid colors that seemed to move even when he was looking directly at them. But there was also something peaceful about it, like looking at a real nebula in space. "How does this painting make you feel?" he asked. "Free," Nira said immediately. "Like I am floating in space without any weight or pressure." "And how do the traditional paintings make you feel?" Nira's skin dimmed, which Jake had learned meant sadness or disappointment. "Trapped. Like I am wearing clothes that do not fit." Jake nodded. "Can I ask you something? Who decides what makes good art?" "The art masters, of course. They have studied for centuries, and they understand the principles of beauty and harmony." "But what if beauty means different things to different people?" Jake asked. What if harmony for you is different from harmony for them? Nira looked confused, but there must be standards. Otherwise, anyone could claim that anything is art. Jake thought about this for a moment. On Earth, we have many different styles of art. Some people like realistic paintings that look exactly like photographs. Other people prefer abstract art. That's all colors and shapes with no recognizable objects. Both can be beautiful, just in different ways. The art masters would say that shows humans have no discipline or understanding of true beauty. Maybe, Jake said. Or maybe it shows that we understand there are many different kinds of beauty, and each person has to find the one that speaks to their heart. Nira stared at her painting for a long time. You think I should continue painting in my own style? Even if the masters disapprove, I think you should paint in whatever style makes you feel free and happy. If other people don't understand it now, maybe they will someday, or maybe they won't, and that's okay too. Over the following weeks, Jake settled into a routine with both sisters. He spent mornings with Lysa, helping her approach engineering problems from practical angles, rather than purely theoretical ones. Afternoons were usually with Nira, discussing art and creativity and the importance of following your own vision. But Jake also learned that his influence was spreading beyond the royal daughters. Other young Valthari began approaching him with questions and problems. Word had spread throughout the diplomatic community about the human mentor who helped people think clearly without judgment. One day, a young Valthari male named Tereth came to see Jake. He was shorter than most of his species, with pale yellow crystalline skin that barely glowed at all. I have heard that you help people solve problems, Tereth said nervously. I try to, Jake said. What's troubling you? I am supposed to choose a career path soon, but I do not want any of the options my family has selected for me. They want me to be a warrior or a politician, but I am interested in growing things. I want to be a farmer. Jake could see why this was a problem. From what he had learned about Valthari culture, farming was considered a low-status occupation, suitable only for the least intelligent members of society. What do you love about farming? Jake asked. Tereth's skin began to glow a little brighter. As his enthusiasm grew, I love watching things grow and change. I love solving the puzzle of what each plant needs to be healthy. I love creating food that nourishes people. That sounds important and meaningful to me, Jake said. Why do your parents think it's not good enough? They say it is work for simple minds, that anyone can push seeds into dirt. Jake smiled. Have they ever tried it? No, of course not. Then, how do they know it's simple? Jake asked. I've met farmers on Earth who understood more about biology and chemistry and weather patterns than most scientists. Growing food is one of the most complex and important jobs in any civilization. Tereth looked surprised. You really think so? I know so. Without farmers, everyone else starves. Without farmers, there are no cities, or art, or technology, because everyone would be too busy hunting for their next meal. By the time Tereth left, he was glowing brightly with excitement and determination. Jake hoped the young Valthari would find the courage to follow his own path. That evening, Princess Zarathiel came to visit Jake in his quarters. She looked pleased about something. I have been receiving reports about your work with the young people, she said. They speak of you with great respect and affection. I'm just trying to help them think through their problems, Jake said. Most of the time, I think they already know the answers. They just need someone to listen while they figure it out. The princess smiled. That is exactly what I hoped you would do. You are teaching them something our culture has forgotten. You are showing them that strength comes from understanding yourself, not from overwhelming others. Is that really so unusual? Jake asked. For us, yes. We have become so focused on intensity and competition that we forgot the value of quiet wisdom. Our young people have been taught to fight for everything, even when cooperation would be more effective. Jake thought about Lisa. engineering projects and Nara's artwork and Tereth's farming dreams. They're all so intelligent and creative. They just needed permission to trust their own instincts. Exactly, the princess said, and you are giving them that permission. You are showing them that they do not need to be like everyone else to be valuable. As the princess left, Jake realized that his role as a mentor was teaching him, as much as it was teaching the young Velthari. He was learning that being helpful did not require being perfect or having all the answers. Sometimes the most important thing you could do for someone was simply believe in them and give them space to grow. For the first time since accepting this strange job, Jake felt confident that he was actually making a difference. He was not changing these young aliens into something they were not. He was helping them become more fully themselves. 3 months after Jake had officially become a mentor to the royal daughters, trouble began brewing in the Velthari diplomatic community. Lord Kethmer had apparently been working quietly to undermine Jake's influence, spreading rumors that the human was corrupting traditional Velthari values. Jake first learned about the conspiracy when Dr. Lisa Park came to his quarters looking worried and angry. "Jake, I think you need to be careful," she said as soon as he opened the door. "I've been hearing some disturbing conversations in the diplomatic lounges." "What kind of conversations?" Jake asked, inviting her to sit down. "Some of the Velthari nobles are saying that you're teaching their young people to be weak and emotional like humans. They claim you're undermining their warrior culture." Jake felt his stomach drop. "But that's not what I'm doing at all. I'm just helping them think through problems and trust their own judgment." "I know that, and anyone who's actually observed your work knows that. But Kethmer and his allies are twisting the truth. They're planning something, Jake. I can feel it." That afternoon, Jake was working with Lisa on a new engineering project when alarms suddenly began sounding throughout the diplomatic section. Emergency lights flashed and automated voices announced that there was a dangerous gas leak in the area where Nero was supposed to be attending an art class. "We have to help her," Lisa said, jumping up from her chair. Jake felt his training kick in. "Wait. Let me check the environmental systems first." He pulled up the station's diagnostic display on his portable computer. According to the readings, there was indeed a toxic gas leak, but something looked wrong about the pattern of the spread. "This doesn't make sense," Jake said, studying the data. "The gas is spreading too evenly, and it's not following the air circulation patterns." Lisa looked over his shoulder at the display. "You think this is artificial?" "I think this might be a trap," Jake said grimly. "Someone wants us to rush in there without thinking, instead of running toward the emergency." Jake sent a message to station security, while he and Lisa analyzed the environmental data more carefully. Within minutes, they had traced the source of the gas to a portable device that had been hidden in the art classroom. Security teams, wearing full protective gear, entered the room and found Nira and 3 other young Velthari, unconscious but unharmed. The gas was designed to knock people out, not kill them, but it would have been dangerous for anyone who rushed in to help without proper equipment. More importantly, hidden cameras in the room revealed that the entire incident had been staged. Lord Kethmer and 2 other nobles had planted the device and were watching from a nearby location, apparently hoping that Jake would either fail to save Nira or would act recklessly and get himself killed in the process. When the truth came out, the scandal rocked the entire Velthari diplomatic mission. Princess Zarathiel was furious, and she immediately called for a formal hearing to address the conspiracy. The hearing took place in the main diplomatic hall, with representatives from dozens of species watching. Lord Kethmer and his co-conspirators were brought forward to face charges of endangering royal family members and attempting to sabotage diplomatic relations. "You were willing to risk my daughter's life to discredit one human," Princess Zarathiel said, her crystalline skin glowing with barely controlled anger. "You have brought shame upon our entire species." Lord Kethmer tried to defend his actions. "I was protecting our traditions from corruption. This human is teaching our young people to be weak and dependent." "Weak?" Lisa stood up from her seat in the audience. Jake taught me to think practically, instead of getting lost in theory. My engineering projects have improved dramatically since I started working with him. Nira also rose to her feet. He taught me that art should come from the heart, not from rules imposed by others. My paintings now express who I truly am, instead of who others want me to be. One by one, other young Velthari began standing and speaking about how Jake had helped them. Tereth talked about finding the courage to pursue farming despite his family's objections. A young female named Zilana described how Jake had helped her overcome her fear of public speaking. Another student explained how Jake's approach to problem-solving had helped him resolve a long-standing conflict with his siblings. These young people are not becoming weak, Princess Zarathiel said when they had finished speaking. They are becoming confident and self-directed. They are learning to think for themselves instead of blindly following authority. The hearing ended with Lord Kethmer and his allies being stripped of their diplomatic status and banned from the station. But more importantly, it had demonstrated to the entire galaxy the positive impact that Jake's mentoring was having on Velthari youth. In the days that followed, Princess Zarathiel received requests from other Velthari families, asking if their children could also work with Jake or other human mentors. The demand was so great that she began developing plans for a formal cultural exchange program. "I want to ask you something," the princess said when she met with Jake to discuss the new program. "Would you be willing to help me establish a school where young Velthari could learn from human teachers?" Jake was overwhelmed by the scope of what she was proposing. "That sounds amazing, but I'm not sure I'm qualified to run a school." "You would not be running it alone," the princess said. "I would bring in Velthari educators who understand our culture, and we would recruit human teachers who share your approach to mentoring. Together, we could create something entirely new." "What would we teach them?" "The same things you have been teaching Lysa and Nira. How to balance emotion with logic, how to solve problems creatively, how to be confident without being arrogant, how to be strong without being cruel." Jake thought about all the young Velthari he had worked with over the past few months. Each of them had grown more confident and capable under his guidance, not because he had taught them specific skills, but because he had helped them trust their own abilities. "I think I'd like to try," he said finally. The Human Velthari Cultural Exchange Academy opened 6 months later in a new section of Harmony Point. Jake was appointed as Director of Student Development, working alongside Princess Zarathiel and a team of educators from both species. The school's first class included 30 young Velthari and 10 human teachers who had been carefully selected for their patience, wisdom, and ability to work across cultural boundaries. The curriculum combined traditional Velthari subjects, like advanced mathematics and energy physics, with human approaches to emotional regulation, creative problem-solving, and collaborative teamwork. Jake found himself busier than he had ever been, but also happier. He spent his days moving between classrooms, helping students work through challenges, and training new human teachers in cross-cultural mentoring techniques. Lysa had become his assistant director, using her engineering skills to design innovative learning environments and assessment methods. Nira taught art classes that encouraged students to express their authentic selves rather than conforming to traditional styles. The success of the program exceeded everyone's expectations. The Velthari students showed remarkable improvements in emotional stability and creative thinking, while the human teachers reported that working with alien minds had expanded their own understanding of learning and growth. Word of the academies success spread throughout the galaxy, and soon other species were requesting similar programs. Jake found himself at the center of a growing movement toward interspecies educational cooperation. One evening, as Jake was walking through the academy's halls after a long day of classes, he encountered a young Velthari student named Kelter, who was sitting alone in the library, looking frustrated. "What's troubling you?" Jake asked, sitting down beside him. "I am trying to write an essay about leadership, but I cannot find the right words," Kelter said. "What kind of leadership are you writing about?" Jake asked. "The kind you practice," Kelter said. "You never give orders or demand obedience, but people follow your guidance anyway. I do not understand how that works." Jake smiled, remembering his own confusion when Princess Zarathiel had first approached him with her strange request. Maybe that's because real leadership isn't about making people do what you want. Maybe it's about helping them figure out what they want and then supporting them as they work toward it. Kelter considered this. "So you lead by serving others?" "I think I just try to be helpful," Jake said. "Leadership might be too big a word for what I do, but that is exactly what makes you a good leader," Kelter insisted. "You do not seek power over others. You seek to give power to others." As Jake walked back to his quarters that night, he reflected on how much his life had changed since that day when Princess Zarathiel had approached him in the maintenance corridor. He was no longer fixing broken air filters and faulty wiring, but he was still essentially doing the same job, identifying problems and finding practical solutions. The difference was that now he was working with people instead of machines, and the problems he was solving were about helping young minds grow and develop instead of keeping life support systems running. But in a way, Jake realized it was still the same fundamental task. He was still making sure that the essential systems were working properly so that life could flourish. The only difference was that now those essential systems were the hearts and minds of the next generation of galactic citizens. Jake looked out his window at the stars and smiled. Somewhere out there, former students from the academy were applying the lessons they had learned, approaching problems with balance and creativity, treating others with respect and compassion. He had started as a simple maintenance worker who just wanted to help people when he could. Now he was helping to maintain something much more important than machinery. He was helping to maintain hope for a future where different species could learn from each other and grow stronger together. It was not the life Jake had planned, but it was exactly the life he was meant to live.